Hello.
Hello. I'll give people 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll start. All right, let's get started. Looking at the list of participants, but I think I can probably skip the slides about APR. But can you confirm you can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, excellent. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, everybody should be familiar with Notewell, various IETF-related BCPs. Remember code of conduct. The main thing is just being respectful and nice to each other. We need a note taker for major things.
Can do it if somebody else will.
Okay. All right. I don't think we'll have that many action items, so that shouldn't be too difficult.
I'm struggling though to open the hedge dog. So give me a moment here.
You can take private notes, that's fine.
All right.
Yeah, if they cannot be online, that's fine. So this is draft list of issues. I'll have a slide on this. In particular, we'll skip the received header field discussions today, but I'll get to that in a moment. And then if we have time, we'll discuss some applicability statement issues. I'm hoping this is going to be a shorter session today. With that in mind, any agenda bashing? All right, hearing none. So, looking at recent discussions on the trace header fields on the mailing list and offline, it's quite clear that we are not quite ready to discuss this. So the proposal is for chairs to create design team including chairs and editors, so 5321 bis and 5322 bis. If anybody else wants to be included on the team, please let chairs know. And the design team will come up with a specific set of changes to the both documents. This is kind of a follow-up to what was discussed at IETF 115, but this slightly more formal way of doing this. Okay, yes, I will send a message to the mailing list about the design team. That's a very good point. Thanks, Pete. Right. Other things to discuss is we have various registries and registration policies. I made slightly more expanded slides than for IETF 115, including what's currently registered and to help our discussions. And hopefully, fingers crossed, starting with a simple one, just literal tags. This is basically the only value registered is IPv6. My personal opinion, I don't believe that many new values will be registered in this one. So I think basically the document it basically says standard section, but it might not be using exactly this language. So it probably should stay standard sections. Discussions, please.
Just a quick observation that having this be anything but standards track creates an opportunity for registration.
John, is it just me or I don't hear you?
Hopefully.
Fine.
It's just you. I heard
That's
him.
fascinating. Okay, let me try. John, try again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think leaving this as anything but standards action is an invitation to somebody noticing and registering IPv10 and a variety of other kinds of nonsense. So just as a means of avoiding denial of service attacks, if nothing else, let's just leave this alone.
Okay, any other comments?
Dave has his hand up.
One are anticipated at this time. Is that intended to be part of the actual document or just a note here?
Can you elaborate, but what do you mean?
Hello?
Yes, hello, I can hear you, Dave.
He means, is it going to be in the document that it says none are anticipated at this time, or is that just for our consideration?
So I'm not hearing anything.
It's actually, it already says this. It said this in 5321.
None are anticipated at this time is in the document already?
Yes, and it was in the past RFCs, yes. All right, moving on. We have via and with subregistries, and this might be experimental. I think I suggested IETF review on the mailing list and last IETF, but obviously we should have a discussion on this. On the next couple of slides, you will see that which specific values are currently registered. So hopefully this will help us make a decision. Okay, so with it has 18 registrations so far: SMTP, SMTP, LMTP, and various variants like SMTPS for TLS, ESMTP-SA for TLS and authentication and stuff like that. Barry.
So my sense is for any of these that say standards action or IESG approved experimental, that phrasing comes from before IETF review existed. I don't see any issue with going to IETF review and leaving it up to the IESG whether it's appropriate to approve an informational or not. I don't see a functional difference between experimental and informational in that regard.
Yeah, and speaking personally, I will also note that I actually wrote a received had a field parser, and I'm getting some very interesting results, including that I observe other values like HTTP and HTTP REST are being used, which probably should be registered. I don't think they're experimental, they are already in use. So if somebody is to write a document, it's probably going to be information. John?
I don't have a strong feeling about this since the ISG decided that that informational documents require IETF consensus. I think that takes us pretty close to IETF review. The key question here is whether we should go even further, because as soon as you start making the argument for HTTP, for example, you're making an argument that that the independent stream ought to be able to publish a document called Big Co's transport mechanism for email, and register with that informational document or transport mechanism as well. I don't have really strong feelings about it, but if we're going to permit IETF informational, then we're at that boundary.
This actually brings a good point. I was actually checked what we're using internally, and we have various other transports as well, which again, I don't think they might be documented in the specification, but I doubt they will be IETF stream documents if we decide to publish anything like CFTP and stuff like that.
Well, the ISG has been increasingly unwilling to publish guerrilla companies' specification of doing so-and-so, and has pushed them to the independent stream. Years ago, those used to be IETF stream documents. Without commenting on whether that's an improvement or a step backwards, that's our present-day reality. And the only other thing which concerns me about these kinds of changes is the ISG having changed its mind to change its mind again.
Right. Pete?
Well, now I'm not sure, and John, maybe you can help. You think that IETF review would not cover the case of it going into the independent stream?
No, that would be RFC required.
Because I think we want these documented, but I don't think there's a big downside to this. I mean, unlike with, I think there's no big downside to having a bunch of these in the long run, even if some of them are goofy. Yeah, I guess I would be okay with RFC required. I'm given the amount of, well, consider if the IESG thinks, someone's trying to register something idiotic in here, they can push back against the independent stream and say, hey, this is trying to route around standards work by, trying to register one of these idiotic things. I'm not convinced RFC required would be that bad.
Do keep in mind, Pete, that the IESG can tell the independent stream, no, this is horrible, don't publish it, it interferes with standards.
And they can publish it anyway.
And the independent stream can publish it anyway.
Yeah. No, understood.
Right. Dave?
Who's first?
The general discussion about whether registration should also be a quality assurance process for the substance, or whether it's really about getting things registered. And I thought we were leaning in the direction of worrying more about facilitating registration than about adding quality control to the process, which thereby reduces registrations. Do I have that understanding wrong? Because it sounds to me like what's being talked about now raises the bar, and I don't mean relative to history, I mean just in general has a higher bar than registration typically should have, absent a clear understanding of the danger of registering something that ain't great.
Barry, go ahead.
Comment was just, I agree with what Pete said. I'm good with RFC required. I would be good with specification required as well. I don't think we want to go any lighter than that, because we do want the specification to be reviewed for these things. But the independent stream gets reviewed sufficiently these days that I'm good with RFC required. And I agree with Dave that we're better off encouraging the registrations.
Yeah, personally, I think that we want some kind of review, whether it's RFC or expert, because we don't want duplicates in this space as much as we can avoid it. And I actually saw in this field things like Microsoft SMTP server with spaces, which is actually not great. Arguably, you might argue that it's syntactic violation, but it's some people decide to put it there. So I prefer RFC required or specification required as well. Dave? Pete? John, did you want to talk again?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm here.
Yeah.
I typed into the chat room, but I'll repeat it here just in case. I agree with Dave in principle on the first come first serve sort of default mode. And my thought is, with regard to message headers, the odds that putting a new stupid one in really doesn't increase the interoperability problem for anybody else. Whereas in here, because things might want to parse this in interesting ways, it marginally increases the possibility of an interoperability problem by putting crap in here. So some sort of higher level seems like a reasonable thing. And I'm now leaning with Barry that we try and drop that as far as possible, and specification required or RFC required are all perfectly reasonable.
Okay, I would try drawing a distinction here, which may be a little bit too fine. But remember that these are clauses in existing registered header fields. They're not new header fields. And that, to use Pete's words, makes this marginally more likely to follow things up if people do creative things. We might or might not agree about where the margin lies. But I'm a little bit hesitant about getting very liberal with these as distinct from the others. And to a considerable extent, and we could say this in the spec if people wanted to, if people want to do creative things here without going through a serious registration review process, then let them create new header fields. And then let's argue about whether those header fields are trace fields or not. But but I think going down below RFC required would be a mistake from that standpoint. And I'm very reluctant to go to specification required for exactly the reasons which set off weeks of discussion and arguments in about that for the service extensions, which is in part that the IANA keeps telling us that they're having trouble recruiting experts, that they're having trouble keeping experts, that they're having trouble getting rapid responses from experts, and the communication between the experts and the community on average across IANA registries with specification required or expert review has been, to put it politely, miserable. So I'm okay going to RFC required, but I don't think we go any lower than that. If we have to go lower than that, I'd suggest doing the same two-track thing that we've tentatively set up for service extensions. So if somebody doesn't want to play, they have to explicitly identify themselves as not wanting to play, and then we just indicate to the community that they are doing this but aren't playing.
Okay, let me try to use voting tool. I know it's just to indicate what.
All the votes we're going to get.
So, all right, moving on. And this via registry, there is currently only 2 values registered, but it's kind of actually, I think, what occurred to me while doing this slide is I have this mule RFC, which is multicast email, not published on IETF stream, which really should have registered a via value because you can consider it a gateway. For that, if I were to do this, I think probably RFC required would work. Otherwise, it will be, I need to submit a separate document on IETF stream. Thoughts? Barry?
The one that comes to mind might be quick, but I'm good with RFC required on this one as well.
Yes, quick is probably going to be another one of these, yes.
Yeah, I think whatever the arguments were for the previous one, going to RFC required probably apply here too. And if we were going to do anything else, we need to justify it. And I don't feel like writing that text.
Okay, I think let's propose RFC required on this one as well. Right, additional registered clauses. So I included 4 registered values from existing RFCs. And there was a variety of discussions again. I kind of thinking after the discussion that we just had on other registries, that's probably RFC required is probably good default here as well. John?
This makes me, in this hierarchy of things between new header fields and messing around with existing, with clauses in existing registered fields, especially ones which are heavily used and people are dependent on, like perceived. I think there's a hierarchy here, and I think this is more dangerous than tampering with the existing existing clauses and putting new values on them, and again explicitly pushing people toward new header fields if they want to stuff information in the headers other than what's already in a field is probably dangerous territory, especially for a field that's already standardized and has been in use since 821, 822, if not before that. So I don't feel as strongly about this as I probably sound, but this would be a good place to. But if we're going to push back on anything at all toward IETF review or even staying with standards check experimental, this is probably the case.
Okay, yeah. Actually, now that I thought a bit more about this, I think you convinced me as well that IETF review is probably good default for this. Pete.
Yeah, more a question than anything else. Do we know that current implementations that go sniffing at receive fields handle or don't handle new clauses easily? And if the current behavior of everything that we know about is new clauses just get ignored and they actually go hunting for things that they care about and nothing else, I'm not nearly given so much heartburn. And that means that, received is probably reasonably safely extensible in this way. Whereas if we know that things hiccup already, even if we know badly implemented things hiccup already, that would probably be a reason to have a stronger standard.
I scan my 50,000 messages in my inbox, received headers from 50,000 messages, and I know that TLS one is used for sure. For example, I haven't seen others yet, but I've been looking very attentively. So I think extensibility is handled. I also see quite a bit of brokenness, but I will follow up on this separately. Okay. Shall I use the fancy tool again? Oh, no, hold on. Not this one. I messed up. I'm not sure how to reset the voting tool. Okay, so shall we do it in the chat then? Who likes Who is in favor? Sorry. Is in favor of IETF review for additional clauses. My apologies, I can't quite type, but I think people got the idea. Okay, so slight preference for IETF review.
Question I would ask is, John, John Clenson, can you live with IETF review, or would you dig your heels in about the status quo?
I'm getting better and better at holding my nose as this work goes on. And but please take this mailing list.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Because I know from some on-list and some off-list discussions that there are at least a few people besides me who think the standard on this stuff ought to be higher.
Okay, what I will post suggested resolution and will ask for objections. And basically, if there is no discussion or no objections, then we'll just go with IETF review for this one. All right, moving on. Okay, so this is basically going back to SMTP extensions registry. This is just a reminder on how we came here. The latest proposal in version 16 is basically two registration standards track or IETF approved experimental for people who want to consider community review or want IETF stamp of approval. Otherwise, minimal effort, first come, first serve. But obviously, IANA will make sure that there are no name conflicts. So in the current version of draft 16, John have text for both proposals. Yes, Barry.
Go ahead and finish what you're saying first.
Barry?
I did speak. Can you hear me, Alexei?
If you're speaking, I'm not hearing anything.
Are other people hearing me?
Very.
And Alexei said that he'd prefer to finish whatever you were talking about first.
All right. Well, never mind then. I'll just say, as I said on the list, I think this is a great proposal, and I'm very happy with where it sits. It strikes the right balance between giving people the opportunity to get broader review and input from the community, while still allowing them to register things lightweight if that's what they want.
Barry, my apologies. I've missed what you said. Can you try again?
Alexi, we're not hearing you anymore.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now just heard that.
Okay, and I am hearing you now.
Alexei, are you hearing me now? Great.
Okay, so
For your benefit, I'll just repeat what I said. I just
right.
basically said that what I said on the list is the case, that this proposal is what I'm looking for, and I'm happy with it.
Yes, and I also confirmed on the mailing list that I'm also happy with this one as a participant. John?
Since you you and Barry have supported this on the mailing list and I'm taking silence for everybody else during this discussion is concerned, unless anybody has other suggestions, I'm going to make an announcement on the mailing list that I'm about to go to work on sorting this out and taking out the spare text and whatever, and give people 24 hours to respond to that and then move on. Just that's like a reasonable strategy.
Sounds like a good plan. All right, moving on. I did mention that we're not going to talk about trace header fields here, but this is kind of related to ANA registries. I think we, at IETF 115, there was a preference for extending existing message header field names registry with an extra field, and we had a discussion. John, do you want to talk about this? John, you're trying to share a document. You're trying to share a document. John, try again.
Have I
John,
lost this?
Yes, Barry?
No, I didn't hear any sound for quite a while, and I was wondering whether it was me or you.
I was trying to volunteer John to talk, but
No, it's probably me. Let me try again and make it be more
okay.
clear. The advantage of my concern about leaving this as as simple registration, which is where we are, with declaration something is a trace field, is that it interacts with all the other trace field issues, such as blocks and ordering and interspersing, of things. And if we stay simply with the existing registration model and allow somebody to put in this is a trace field statement, then then something becomes a trace field or not simply by author declaration. And to the extent to which we think any of the, I should say simply by registrant declarations, documentation is not required. And to the extent to which we think any of this stuff about blocks of things and ordering and putting things together and not interspersing stuff is of any value whatsoever, having something be a trace field or not by author declaration is sort of the end of that. So I have because of that concern, and again, depending on what other decisions we make about trace fields, my suspicion is that we should put this into a dual track model and not permit somebody to declare something as trace field except by IETF review.
Okay, so sorry, I'm messing up with the
Other variation
slides again.
Parenthetically, is that if we start talking about other kinds of blocks like resent blocks, then arguably, if we're going to put something in the registry that says something is a trace field, we should allow for other kinds of declarations that something is part of a different kind of block which gets special treatment.
Okay. I think you're right. We are not quite ready for this discussion. Let's skip this for now. I would like to wrap up. I have 3 slides on AS issues just to kind of follow up on things. Maybe we can do it very quickly, and if discussion drags on, then, well, we'll see.
So the decision about the slide you just took down is we're deferring that decision. Is that correct?
Correct. No decision. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. John, can you quickly talk about this one? This was extracted from 5321 bis. I checked, I think a lot of text is already covered about relationship to TLS and transport security. It was already covered by ticket 54. I think we probably need to make sure that this is discussed on the mailing list. I suspect there is actually nothing to add to the document, but if people can double check or suggest some specific text, that would be great. Right, ticket about 78 octet limit versus 998 length limit. I suggested some possible text in a private message. Pete, do you have an opinion? Obviously, we need to discuss this on the mailing list, but I'm just trying to get an idea whether people think this is a useful addition to the document.
And I'd almost invite Ken to come say something about this. I'm perfectly happy for the AS to go into a greater explanation of what's going on here. But, we talked about adding some text, and I'm not totally sure I've got a handle on what's desired. I've certainly got no problem with what's stated here.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I wasn't sure previously what problem we were trying to address, but given Alexi's text, if that is the problem I'm trying to address, then I'm fine with that, what he came up with.
Yeah, I'm. Some of it is my gut feel. I kind of making a couple of statements. One is that I've observed pretty long. So implementation don't seem to have a problem with length of header fields.
John's hand up may be exactly what I'm looking for. I I don't quite understand the ambiguity that's at issue here. Um, you know, I understand that minus 0000 was a hack we put in 2822, and some people have used it, but I'm not clear on what else would help people do the right thing. So I'm speaking as a participant, not as the document editor, I'm inclined to leave it alone, but I'm certainly open to get some clarifying text.
My concern here is we've got another working group that is busy doing things with time zone. I've got two concerns. The first is we got another working group which is busy doing things with time zones in all sorts of other things. And at least if we're going to do something which is different from that working group, from what that working group is trying to do, then I think we should at least be explicit about that. And the second concern is I mentioned this on list, I think, is that every use we have had so far in a standards track email specification that has used data and receive fields, as far as I know, has done so as a timestamp. So it's always the date at which something happens. As soon as we start having specifications floating around, including the one which is now in last call, which are talking about future dates, then all the issues which Sedate and Calyx have been struggling with about how you specify future dates and what their semantics are, fall into the email domain as well. And I would like to make a specific suggestion, which is that the co-author of that future-looking specification, the editors of the AS, perfectly not including me, the working group co-chairs, and since she's lucky enough to be on this call, Francesca, as the AD responsible for the Sedate and Calyx, get together with the Sedate and Calyx leadership and see if we can figure out a way to either find a middle ground here or find some very clear language which says the email specs are doing something differently from whatever those specs are, and people should be aware of it and stuff that language into both the AS and the Calyx and the Sedate specs.
Okay.
Francesca, does that seem reasonable?
Hello, sounds very reasonable to me.
Good, because you're the
follow up. Well, thank you, John, for volunteering everybody else for a change. All right, Francesca will follow up on this. If Todd, if you can minute that, we should do that. All right, with that, I I have no more slides. Thank you for coming. Hopefully, in a couple of weeks, I will have more information about from my parsing of received header fields experiment. I will feed that to the working group. With that, thank you all very much, and see you next time.